Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 492. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. How's it going, guys?
Oh, you know it's going good.
I do now.
It's going awesome.
Real good. I'm with my bros.
Matt and John are there?
No, not my real bros, my virtual bros.
Oh.
That's you guys.
We're virtual now, Kyle.
Yeah.
We're not real bros. We're
Yeah, I got taken down a peg from being a real friend to a virtual friend.
yeah.
You're my Pinocchio friends.
Well, I'm excited to bro down with you guys. It's going to be brotastic.
Are we going to make as much bro references as we can this episode?
Well, James and I are. I don't know what your plans are.
All right, bro, my number 10. Bro, you just wait.
It's going to be hard not to. I got a lot of bromances on my list.
James.
Yeah.
Are the rumors true?
I'm a bro? Yes.
No, not those rumors. Are the bigger rumors? They're all over the internet. Are they true?
Anything you read on the internet is probably true. Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. Great to hear. Kyle,
Mhm.
same question.
Are the rumors true on the internet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most likely.
All right.
I would
Fantastic.
give stock to all of them.
It's going to be a good show today.
What are we answering that is true?
It's not important, James.
All right. Okay.
It's not important.
Perfect.
James, what are we doing today?
We're doing a top 10 last 10. Thanks for asking, bro. I'm super excited about this. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I mean, not a long while, but a month and a half, something like that. Oddly enough, I've watched exactly 10 movies since the last time we did this.
I am in this same boat. There's no 11s, nothing I had to cut. I was actually watching movies last night to make sure that I could have 10 for this episode.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's if you cut out rewatches and, movies that we talked about in their own episodes. But
exactly.
But this was like perfectly timed for me. I was impressed. I think it's been quite a while since that's true.
Yeah, James, has your movie watching gone down in the past month or what?
No, I just did I did like a Fast and Furious marathon in there where I watched every Fast and Furious movie. And since my mom has been staying with me for reasons, I've just been rewatching a bunch of stuff, right? Because I'm not going to put something in that I haven't seen before that I don't think she'll like. You know what I mean? So it's been a lot of movies in the last week. A lot. It's been 3 or 4 movies that I'm getting to rewatch. Which I got to rewatch Brooklyn and The Farewell and The Mountain Between Us, like a bunch of movies that I probably wouldn't have ever gotten. It never would have sparked that I should rewatch this tonight unless I had somebody in the house with me who would be interested in those types of movies. So it's been great, but not on my list because they're rewatches. Only new movies on my list for this week.
Nice.
Well, I have a shocking surprise for later in our list, but
okay, I'm ready to be shocked.
Hopefully you didn't oversell it.
No, this is Cinerealist history. The greatest thing that'll ever happen on this show is going to happen right here today.
Yo, bro, I'm ready for it.
Let's bro down and talk about it.
Let's get it. This is our top 10. I'm just going to throw out all the slang. There's this one phrase. I forget what it is, but a lot of bros have been using it lately. I think I'm going to integrate it, ironically, but I forget what it is.
Do we get to know what it is?
I'll have to slide it in when I remember what it is. It's a ridiculous.
We'll need to guess the phrase. Apparently, now it's a game, Zach. Who can guess it first?
Yes, it's a game. All right. This is our top 10, last 10. This is a staple of this podcast. We've been doing it since the beginning.
Top 10, top 10, and top 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, last 10, and top 10, top 10, and top 10, and top 10, last 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, and top 10.
And we're going to do it today. But first, we're going to tell you what it is. Kyle, why don't you do that? What is a top 10, last 10?
A top 10, last 10, or as some people like to call it, a last 10, top 10, debate's still out there, is we make a list of the last 10 movies we saw. We rank them against each other, 1 through 10, least favorite to most favorite, and that's it. There's no more common thread besides last 10 movies we saw.
That is it. Awesome. Let's jump into it. Who wants to go first with their number 10?
I want to go first.
Zach.
All right.
Do it.
Yes. My number 10.
Oh,
is
I
a
remembered
film.
the word. Sorry.
Oh.
It's kind of a cursey. It's kind of a cursey word.
I thought you were just going to slide it in, not abruptly stop the show.
I'll slide it in later.
Okay.
You're going to slide in your cursey word?
It's not that cursey, but it's a word you won't say.
All right. Well, I'm excited.
Go ahead, Zach. I'll slide it in.
Do I have permission, James, to go ahead?
Yes, do it.
Feel free to interrupt me with a cursey word, though.
Okay.
As needed. My number 10 just got released recently on Disney Plus. It is the latest rock vehicle starring Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson. It is Jungle Cruise. And this movie was not great. It was fine. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't anything I loved or liked a lot. It's kind of like, I think this is a normal way to describe it, but it's kind of like watching a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It's shot that way. It has that kind of, quick action set pieces and, just kind of glib plot contrivances and all that kind of stuff, with a little supernatural elements and all that kind of stuff. It was fine. Emily Blunt and The Rock are just really charismatic actors, and so from that perspective, it's fun to watch them on screen. But this movie is nothing to write home about at all, and it's kind of mindlessly entertaining to a point, and I was fine with it. How's that for a strong review?
Wow. How kid-friendly is it?
It's very kid-friendly.
Okay.
Yeah. Is your kid terrified of puns or
yeah, witty wordplay just sends him screaming to the corner?
Yeah, then I would just stay away.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do want to check it out. Probably watch it with the family. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I think it's going to survive on the charisma of Emily Blunt and The Rock.
Yeah.
My number 10 is also a 2021 film. This is a Netflix movie called Awake. And this movie was better than I was expecting, because I was expecting not a good movie whatsoever. This is starring Gina Rodriguez, and she's a single mom. She's struggling to raise her teenage son and her elementary school age daughter. And a happening happens. I saw someone describe it as a unexplained global happening, or an UG. Right? Where something just happens that it changes the world. So
is that a phrase? Is that a real thing?
I looked it up, and I feel like maybe this writer invented it, but I think we should incorporate it. Every time you have a movie where there's an apocalypse, where something just happens, it's an UG. So something happens, there's like a big EMP explosion, no electricity, no cars. All right. So that's the first step of the apocalypse, is nothing electronic works anymore. So already people are a little on edge. But then people realize that they can't sleep either. And it's not like they just are awake and normal the whole time. It's like if you can't sleep, how your mind starts to deteriorate. You can't function as well. You can't think as well. And sort of the whole crux of this is Gina Rodriguez and her kids trying to survive this new apocalypse where nothing works and they can't sleep. So it's a double apocalypse. The thing is, her daughter can sleep. So they need to protect her too, because everyone's like, whoa, why can this girl sleep? Why is she special? And this movie, society devolves so quickly. Like after one sleepless night, people are ready to sacrifice this girl to like please God, for example. After 2 sleepless nights, we've gone the full road where like they fix a car, obviously. And they're driving around and there's like bandits, hoisting people up, by their toes on the side of the road. After 2 nights, the whole world goes full Mad Max Fury Road after not sleeping, which is a little ridiculous. It does eventually end up in a military installation, which is actually kind of a fun ending because you've got all these soldiers who are taking adrenaline pills to stay awake after 3 nights of not sleeping. And then they just lose it and start shooting everything because they just have completely lost their mind. So that's actually kind of an interesting ending. And there is, I almost want to talk this like spoilery because there are crazy implications. They figure out how to make people sleep again. And like, what is that implication for the world after this movie? So this movie can almost use a sequel of like, here's how people sleep, but you're not going to like it. So, yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's not bad. It's not great. But like, he's got Gina Rodriguez, who I like. It also has Jennifer Jason Leigh. And Zach, I think I have Jennifer Jason Leigh face blindness. Because we're watching this movie and like at this military base, there's this middle-aged psychiatrist who's kind of in charge. And I'm like, who's this woman in like I would expect the Jennifer Jason Leigh role. And it was her. And then we watched Woman in the Window earlier this year. And she was in that. And there's a third movie on this list with her in it. I don't think I know what she looks like.
That's so fun. And she has such a distinctive voice as well.
So and that's what tips me off. Maybe I hear her talk. I'm like, oh, she sounds like Jennifer Jason Leigh. But
I think you have JJL blindness.
I think I do, bro. So anyway, that's Awake. It's a movie that's worth. There's things you could talk about. It's not just like a dud, but it's also not something you have to go rush out and see either.
I've never even heard of it.
If people couldn't sleep, the world would not last 2 weeks. I mean, it's just not happening. Something would have to happen.
But this movie, like the world didn't last 2 days. It definitely sped things up a little quickly.
Did things really get crazy after just one night?
After one night, there was a church of people ready to sacrifice the girl who could sleep to please God.
Okay.
One night. 2 nights, Mad Max Fury Road, or like The Road, the Cormac McCarthy book / movie was happening all around them.
After 2 nights?
After 2 nights.
I'm not buying it.
Yeah. No, that stuff was a leap. Like after 3 nights, a bunch of adrenaline military guys going crazy, I could buy that.
Yeah.
I'd buy it.
Go ahead, buy it.
It's on Netflix. You can just watch it.
No, he wants to buy it.
I already bought it, I guess.
You got I'm going to buy 4K releases of every Netflix exclusive I can.
My number 10 is from 1965, and I think it's titled Pierrot Le Fou. I think
Your
that's
number
how 10? You say it.
James, not cool.
I know. Zach made the comment last week or whenever that you have to be a cool person to like this, and I am not a cool person because I did not like this movie.
You failed the litmus test on that one.
That's fine.
Oh, man.
I'm happy to fail it for sure.
I did not say you had to be a cool person to like this movie. I said that if you meet someone and this is their favorite movie, you know they're cool.
That's what it was. Well, this is the opposite of my favorite movie. I would say. So I am uncool. I don't know. It's fine. I'm fine with it at this point. Yeah, it's a Jean-Luc Godard movie. The first one I've seen.
Oh, that's your first Godard?
That's my first Godard.
Wow.
So that might be the issue, that you have to like kind of know what you're getting into. And I can say I've experienced one of his at this point. I think Breathless is the only one that's like maybe held in higher regard than this one. Would that be a fair statement?
No.
Okay.
No, there's probably 4 other ones that are held in high regard, but it's like, choosing between your children.
Gotcha. Are those other 4 made in the same style-ish type thing?
To varying degrees, yes.
Okay. Because it's a strange presentation for a movie from the 60s, I would say. At least not one that I'm used to.
Yes. If you're expecting like a stage play or something, it's not that.
Not even that. I'm like, in the same year that Sound of Music won the Academy Award, this came out in France.
Well, the French cinema in the 60s was a little different than Hollywood in the 60s.
Yeah. But Sound of Music doesn't feel like a stage play to me. So I think they had the ability to not make those movies. Neither does Pierrot Le Fou.
Pierrot Le Fou.
Pierrot Le Fou. It doesn't feel like a stage play to me. But it's an oddly structured movie. It's like it has a plot, but it just barely ekes details to you, and also just kind of changes the way it's telling the story midway, and like jumps around in time. Like sometimes in the middle of a scene, it'll just jump time for no reason whatsoever. Like it'll make a cut and all of a sudden they're in the exact same location, finishing the conversation, different clothes on. And then later you realize, oh, this is like a month later. Or who knows how long later.
Godard very much believed that like film is a lie, and he didn't want people to be seduced by it. And so he's constantly trying to remind you, you're watching a movie. This isn't real. I think that's part of why he does that.
Yeah.
Right. That explains too the whole like swelling orchestral music that just dead stops for no reason whatsoever. Multiple times in the movie. And so the plot itself is very much like a Bonnie and Clyde type situation. It's like 2 people on the run from the law on some level, but there's a weird, subversive, consistent edge to the movie. And so I enjoyed the storyline. I just didn't. I understood the presentation, but I did not enjoy the presentation. I was actively just kind of like, why are we doing it? And in the end, it felt very silly to tell this story that way.
Wait till you watch Weekend.
Yeah, I'm really not looking forward to another Godard film if they're all... I'm going to use a word that might piss some people off. Nonsense like this. Because it felt very nonsense to me.
Sure. So this one is much more, I would say, plot heavy. A lot of them are like, in the sense of like, they have a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing going on. Mm-hmm. Others of them are like, are just about a relation. Like Contempt is just about a relationship that's falling apart. So it's mostly just 2 people yelling at each other. You know, it's not trying to give you a story.
Same for Breathless. That's a relationship movie.
Yeah. In Breathless, they have a high five. Mm-hmm. Like he does a high five at one point. And if you look on Wikipedia and like when was the high five invented, they'll say the 70s by a baseball player. And then I was watching Breathless and I was like, no, 1960, there was a high five.
Should hop on Wikipedia and edit it.
Yeah, I should.
James, you should, I know you don't like this one. You should try Alphaville, which is Godard making a detective sci-fi movie.
Okay. And
it's probably the same style presentation.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in a different story it would work. I don't know. It's just, I wasn't mad at the movie. I was just like, okay, I could see how like this would be unique at the time, right? I doubt anybody's doing this, and nobody does it anymore because it's silly.
No.
Who does this?
everyone. So he was one of the two, like 3 or 4 creators of the French New Wave, and the French New Wave is what inspired like Lucas, Spielberg, Scorsese. All of them like worshipped Godard, and so much of their style is like Godard 2.0. So like they took what he did and then made it palatable in Jaws. You know,
I understand what you're saying. And I understand the idea of like there are things in here that people adopted into a style that's more mainstream. But I'm saying nobody makes movies that are this nonsensical anymore because nobody would watch them, right?
I don't know. I watch these.
They're not. Nobody's making them. I don't know anybody that's making anything that's like this off the wall. Most people are making fairly straightforward movies that have some of the experimentation in this integrated here and there, but not all this. I mean, it's literally like he threw everything in the kitchen sink at trying to make this as nonsensical as he could, compared to what I've come to expect from typical storytelling.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like at any point when you would make the rational decision to keep the audience engaged, he made some kind of subversive decision to lead you down this side path, and eventually he'd realign you, but it's constantly trying to divert you from where your brain wants the movie to go. And I respect that, but it doesn't mean I enjoyed watching it. And that's
right, James.
That's kind of where it lays for me.
Hey, you're the type of person where Pierre LeFou is not your favorite movie. That's fine.
For sure.
That's fine.
You can find other ways to be cool.
I mean, I generally
cool
don't.
and Luke.
I generally don't like
other.
experimental movies, though. I mean, I don't really watch them, but the ones that I've seen, most of them don't do much for me. So I'm just saying it's not necessarily Pierre LeFou's fault. This is a trend with me, I would say. So anyway, my number 10.
Nice. Well, I'll make you a Godard list that you can ignore.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. My number 9 is Moonrise. Have either of you seen Moonrise?
Haven't heard of it.
1948.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
So I recently came into a lot of Criterion Blu-rays, and I've been selling them online. Mm-hmm. And then as they sell, I like watch them before I like ship them out, to make sure it works and everything.
Quality control.
What's that? Quality control.
Yeah.
QA is extremely important to me. And so one of them was Moonrise, which is also a film I had never heard of. It's directed by Frank Borzage. I don't know how to say Borzage. And I was like, okay, I'm in for a random Criterion. And so here's the story, essentially, is a boy is mercilessly bullied for the fact that his father was hung. So I guess his dad was accused of killing another man and he was hung for it. And so all the kids like bullied him so much for it. He grew up, he was just always bullied by the town boys, whatever. Anyway, one of them goes a little bit too far one night and he kills him. Like the bullied boy strikes back at his bully and kills him or whatever. Instead of like going to the cops and saying like, look, I just self-defense killed this guy, he hides the body. And then it's like a thriller of like, can he keep his secret? Kind of a thing. So it's kind of noir-y. It's kind of melodramatic, and it was good. It was worth watching. I'm glad that I watched it. The filmmaking was definitely inventive, I thought, especially for the time. It had some really great close-ups and some cool tracking shots. But I'm not a huge fan of melodrama, or like people just feeling very intense emotion that we just watch in close up, kind of a thing. And there's a lot of that. There was definitely some moralizing at the end. So it was fine. But I enjoyed it. So there's that. So anyway, it's called Moonrise, and it was a quick hour and a half long.
Nice.
Sometimes a nice 90-minute movie is what you need. You're not committing. You're just like, all right, 90 minutes. If I like it, great. If I don't, it's only been 90 minutes of my time.
Absolutely. It's got a cameo from Ethel Barrymore. Lloyd Bridges is in it. Yeah.
All right. My number 9 is another 2021 Netflix movie. This is animated, and this is Wish Dragon. And the easiest way to describe this plot is this movie is Aladdin, but it takes place in modern day China with Chinese traditions influencing the story instead of, faux Arabian traditions of the Aladdin Disney movie.
Wasn't the original Aladdin story, he was Chinese?
Is that true? I don't know.
Yeah. I believe Aladdin was from China.
Okay. All right. I always thought Aladdin was part of like the 40 Thieves or the Arabian Nights story.
He was, but in that story he's described as being from China because China was like an exotic unknown place.
Okay. Well, so I'm not familiar with the original Aladdin story. I'm most familiar, obviously, with the Disney version. And this movie it's too similar to the Disney version to a fault. And maybe it's because they're telling the exact same story, but it's not just the story they're telling, it's the tone. Like instead of a genie, it's a dragon in this story. The dragon kind of has that same kind of sarcastic charm to it. He wants to be a prince to impress a girl, and it's just all the exact same beats as Aladdin. And I understand it's probably using the same story, that's why. But if you're going to remake or do a new take on a very well-known movie, I think you have to do something different besides change the rapper. And I think you could play Aladdin and Wish Dragon side by side, and it would just like hit all the same beats at the exact same moments. It was just way too similar for me to enjoy it and not keep thinking this is just Aladdin, but not as good. The one good thing I liked about it is it did give like some backstory to the genie, right? And in Disney Aladdin, the genie's just the genie. He wants to be free. In Wish Dragon, we actually learn how he got trapped in the lamp and sort of how his actions led to that, which I thought was that kind of interesting take. But everything else is just photocopy of Aladdin.
Oh, the dragon comes out of a lamp?
Yeah, there's a magic teapot in this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not supposed to be based on your review, but now I'm intrigued.
I mean, it's like I gave it 3 stars. It's not a bad movie, but there's nothing. To me, it didn't feel original whatsoever, plot and tone wise.
Is this a Chinese film?
I believe it originally came out in China and then was dubbed with English speaking actors in sometime in the summer.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe it's so close to Aladdin because it's like Chinese production version of Aladdin.
It's made by Sony. It's their follow up to Mitchell versus the Machines, which I enjoyed.
And Mitchell vs. the Machines is a much more interesting movie, both visually and story wise. Wish Dragon, even the animation wasn't that compelling.
Okay. Cool. Well, it wasn't even on my radar, and I guess I'll keep it off the radar. My number.
If you have a young kid, sure, but no reason you have to watch it, James.
I don't. So
I looked it up, and the story of Aladdin is associated with the book of 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, and it describes Aladdin as a boy from one of the cities of China.
Oh, there you go. Aladdin's Chinese.
Good to know. My number 9 is the previously mentioned Jungle Cruise from 2020. I don't have much to say that disagreed with Zach. I think generally we were completely in line. The only thing that was really creative, in my opinion, was hiring Metallica to do the score for the movie. Like that seemed like an odd choice for this type of movie and not one that they made with Pirates of the Caribbean. I wonder like how many dudes in their 35 to 50 years old. We're watching this, and like when the movie opens up with Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, an instrumental version that's just a little bit off, and then later on that instrumental comes back for like no reason whatsoever. It's just the weirdest choice, next to, you know, including Nirvana in Pan years ago, of music. But in this movie, they don't even use the lyrics. It's just the melody. And they hired Metallica to like rescore that song specifically for Jungle Cruise. It's just the strangest team up I think I could imagine for Metallica and for Disney.
Well, not as strange as when they teamed up with, who's the Velvet Underground guy? Lou Reed.
You didn't think that? That's normal to me, because at least it's two magicians, two musicians.
Magicians.
Because they're both musicians in that sense.
Yes.
Doing their tricks.
Yeah.
But their product was so dull.
Their product was exactly what you'd expect if Metallica and Lou Reed got together and made music. So
Yeah.
I don't know what people were expecting, but that's exactly what I was expecting, what we got. Yeah, but Jungle Cruise, very average Disney adventure film, I would say. My number 9.
I don't think it'll surprise either of you, but I did not realize that there was any Metallica music in this at all.
That does not shock me.
I didn't pick up on any of that.
I actually have I have a music question for you guys later, and I know one of you will get it, one of you won't.
I can't wait.
Well, let's see who it is. Okay, my number 8. I'm into this movie. It was another Criterion Blu-ray that I watched and sold and mailed. It's called The Naked Kiss from 1964. Another hour and 30-minute long movie. It's directed and written by Samuel Fuller, who, let's see, what would you guys know Samuel Fuller from? Have either of you seen a Samuel Fuller film? He wrote Shock Corridor and
White Dog.
Yeah.
Nope, can't say I have.
I've seen that poster a bunch, but I haven't seen anything from him.
Okay. So The Naked Kiss it starts with a punch, right? So it's about a prostitute who gives it up and goes and works at a hospital for kids with disabilities. And so she's like, moves this new town nearby, you know, and she's like this, everyone thinks of her as like the saint, but then like several men in the town know her from her prostitute days, you know, because they were like her clients. And so she's trying to basically escape her past, and these men are trying to like hold it over her basically. Anyways, the movie starts with like this close-up of her as she's like slapping a guy around with her shoes, and it's very like quick cut and violent, and then he like pulls her hair and her wig comes off, and so she's completely bald and like beating him with her shoe. It's just a very shocking sequence of events to start a movie with, especially in 1964. You know, I think Godard would have been proud. No, so yeah, and then the movie goes places for sure. The final like 30 minutes, it takes a complete right turn, and it becomes about a sobering social issue that I don't think any movie had ever tackled. And that was very, very surprising. But yeah, I enjoyed The Naked Kiss. It's a film noir with a female protagonist at the center. And I can't think of another film noir that's like that, where it's absolutely this woman's story and movie, and she carries the entire movie. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, some of the performances are a little, you know, stilted. But the central performance is not, and the central performance is amazing. And yeah, so I thought this was a lot of fun. It's called The Naked Kiss. My number 8.
You got some good Criterions on this list so far.
Yeah.
How many Criterions do you have?
Before I sold any, I had 47.
I'm sorry. On this top 10, last 10 list.
Oh, 2.
All right. So we've heard them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping to hear more.
Next week.
We're doing another top 10 or we're gonna watch 10 movies for next week.
Yeah.
All right, my number 8 is actually a movie that came up when James and I talked No Sudden Move, and you recommended this to me. You want to take a guess, James?
No.
It involves Soderbergh.
Contagion.
Out of Sight.
Out of Sight. Okay.
Out of Sight. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty sure as we were talking No Sudden Move, this came up because we were talking his filmography. A movie I had not seen of his before, but I thought we talked about it. Might as well check it out. This stars George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, as well as a bunch of people you see in lots of Soderbergh movies. So you got Don Cheadle, Steve Zahn, Luis Guzman. Like he's locking his go-to players early, which is awesome. George Clooney plays he's a bank robber, and he's in jail, and he breaks out of jail. And while he's breaking out, Jennifer Lopez, who plays a U.S. Marshal, just happens to be in the parking lot of the jail as he's breaking out. And Ving Rhames, his accomplice, kidnaps Jennifer Lopez while breaking out George Clooney. And they have this meet cute, the U.S. Marshal and this bank robber, in the back of in like the hood of a trunk, right? Where they're, George Clooney's kind of hitting on Jennifer Lopez, and she's just like, you are a bank robber and you are kidnapping me. I want nothing to do with this. And she eventually gets away. They go their separate ways. But they kind of become obsessed with each other. And we're like, George Clooney can't stop thinking about, this connection they had. And she, for whatever unbelievable reason, feels the connection too. So as a romance, this felt like a very 90s plot. Like, what if a bank robber and a U.S. Marshal fell in love and, couldn't resist each other? And that I found a little unbelievable. They even kind of talk about it. They mentioned the movie 3 Days of the Condor, where Robert Redford kidnaps Faye Dunaway, and then they end up falling in love in the end, where it's totally his hostage. Shouldn't be happening. But the movie does get better because they kind of move away from some more of the romance and get more to the sort of the cat and mouse chase of them as she's trying to track him. And in the best Soderbergh style, there is a heist involved where he and Don Cheadle and a bunch of other players are all trying to rob, I believe it's Albert Brooks' character, of a bunch of diamonds. So there's a cool heist in the middle of this cat and mouse game between Jennifer Lopez and George Clooney. And I mean, they've got chemistry. Obviously they're two very charming, attractive people, but it shows on the screen. So I did enjoy watching this movie. I don't think it maybe aged as well as other movies from the 90s, but still a good watch.
Nice. My number 8 is Zola, which is the A24 movie that came out a month or so ago.
So was it very good?
It's a black comedy. This is where my list goes from Pierrot Le Fou was I did not like that. Jungle Cruise was average. This is slightly better than average for an A24 movie, I would say. There are movies that are similar. The direct comparison would probably be Spring Breakers, because it's also A24, has a strange edge to it. But with Spring Breakers, there's an experimental element to it, where it's the storytelling is a little not super straightforward, and there's strange voiceovers that repeat over the course of it and stuff like that. Whereas Zola is definitely kind of more straightforward road trip storytelling. About the story originated on Twitter. This girl met another woman on Twitter, and then the woman invited her to go to Florida with her and her boyfriend, and they're both exotic dancers, and so they were going to hit some clubs and make some money in Florida. So she takes this trip, and then over the course of the trip, she realizes that people want her to do more than dancing in Florida, and she's not okay with that. And so the boyfriend turns out to be not your typical boyfriend, more like a coded term for, you'll have to see the movie if you're interested in it. But it's just a very straightforward telling of somebody who gets in over their head and didn't fully understand what she was getting into, and then she makes the most of the situation, and kind of turns the tables on people that are trying to exploit her. And it was an interesting watch, but ultimately it was kind of like, okay, I saw it and I moved on. It didn't make a huge impression on me, which is odd because A24 movies, good or bad, typically make decent sized impressions on me. And this one is just kind of middle of the road. So my number 8.
How A24-ish is it?
It's very straightforward, but
okay,
you wouldn't want to watch it with a prude. It's about strip clubs and stuff like that. So
I think prudes can enjoy strip clubs.
Sure. Okay.
My number 7. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay. I saw it on Netflix. It's a documentary called Untold: Malice at the Palace. This was a sports documentary. It's part of a series, the Untold series. And it's the first one I watched, and I will be watching more because I enjoyed this one. I think, I'm not a huge sports viewer, but I love a good sports documentary for sure. Because it almost is like a nice summary of like interesting behind like things that happened. Kind of, I really like the myth of like sports legends and all that kind of like the myth making, basically like the who these people were and like almost like they're kings and knights with tales to tell kind of a thing. That's the part of it that I really like. And so this tells the behind the scenes story basically of a kind of a infamous fight that broke out at the end of a Pacers-Pistons game in 2004. It was right at the end of the game, and then the fight went into the stands, and it was like the Pistons fighting the spectators. So an event, first of all, that I hadn't heard about, so it was all new to me.
What? That was the first time you'd heard about that?
Oh yeah, totally.
Huh.
Which is funny. The documentary just kind of assumes you have seen the brawl before.
Because it's pretty much like one of the most infamous fights at a game in any sport in the United States ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're used to players like getting mad at each other. You're not used to players going out and punching fans.
Right. And not just one player. It's like a melee.
Sure.
It turns into a melee.
It got pretty crazy.
Yep.
So anyway, this shows a ton of footage, kind of like walks you through it and interviews all of the people involved, like some of the fans that were in the fight, all the players. And I imagine it contextualizes everything that happened in a way that no one had done before. So I think that had you watched the fight, when it happened, watching this will kind of shift your perspective of what actually happened that night. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And I'm glad I watched it for sure. So it's called Untold: Malice at the Palace. And there's other Untolds that I will also watch.
Oh, is it a doc series?
Yeah, it's a docuseries.
Are they all about sports fights or sports in general?
They're not all about sports fights.
Okay.
But I think they're all like sports stories. Yeah.
That'd be a very niche documentary topic. Like, we're going to take famous brawls from sporting events.
Yeah. I'm looking right now to see what the other 2 episodes are about. But I'm pretty sure they're not just about different brawls. Then I think they would call the series something different.
Nice. All right. My number 7 is a 1982 movie. This is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, directed by Amy Heckerling, who's best known probably for Clueless, but also directed the Look Who's Talking and Look Who's Talking 2 movies. Just saw that. And I didn't really know what to expect from this movie. The 2 things I knew about it going in were Sean Penn plays a stoner, and there's a famous Phoebe Cates scene in the pool. And those are the only 2 things I knew about this movie. So I wasn't sure what to expect. And what I got was sort of like a horny 80s high school teenager comedy, kind of like in the vein of Porky's. So maybe I was expecting something like a little not a little bit more highbrow, just because it's such a, I think, a well-known movie. And it's definitely better than movies like Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds and things like that. But it's also very much in that vein, where it doesn't quite follow. Again, I also thought Sean Penn would be like the main character, and he's definitely the breakout character. But there's no one unified plot. It sort of like checks in with these different teenagers in high school, all at the same high school throughout the year, as they just kind of go through a year together and, trying to figure out love and friendships and jobs and all that kind of stuff. So it's a kind of movie like we don't make anymore. What's not Groundhog Day? What's the one about golfing? Caddyshack, right? Caddyshack's kind of the same way, where you sort of check in with different characters throughout the movie, and there's kind of a plot, but you're also just sort of like, let's go see what these people are up to. Now let's go see what these people are up to. This is very much in that same vein, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh, who was a name I saw in the credits, and I was looking for her. I'm like, where is she in this movie? Because she's like 20 years old in this movie. So I had to like look up a picture, like, oh, okay, that's her. If there's a main character, I would say she is the main character. But there was one joke that made me like very much laugh out loud. It's a music joke. I'm going to set up the joke, and Zach, I want you to explain first why it's funny.
Of course. You got
and
it,
if you can't, then James, you can jump in. All right. So
all over it.
There's a character, and he's always given his friends like bad love advice. It's like very 80s love advice, which you watch now, you're like, oh, that's just all terrible. But one of his advice was like, when you take a girl on a date, play the most romantic album in the world, which is side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4. And then it smash cuts to him in the car, and they're listening to Kashmir. And I laughed. Zach, why is that funny?
Because of the juxtaposition of the advice and then the song that they played. So funny.
But why?
No idea.
Okay.
No
James, you know why it's
funny? I
funny?
don't know either. I mean, why is this funny? Explain it to me.
Because Kashmir is on physical graffiti.
I don't. So what?
I don't know what that means.
Oh my god. Okay, apparently I find this funny.
You didn't explain it yet.
The friend is like, hey, play this Led Zeppelin album.
Right.
And the guy plays the wrong Led Zeppelin album.
Okay.
But the only way that we know, like, it's not like the only way it's punctuated as a joke is because he's saying like, hey, play Led Zeppelin 4. And then they cuts to Kashmir, which is on physical graffiti. So like, he's like, I remember Led Zeppelin. Okay, let's put a song in and play the wrong one.
Is one more appropriate for the moment than the other?
I don't think it matters the album he said. I think it's the joke is more of like, the guy kind of got the advice right, but also missed the mark because he chose the wrong Led Zeppelin album.
I think you overestimate how much Led Zeppelin I've listened to.
Apparently I have.
Because I have a very cursory knowledge of Led Zeppelin. I couldn't tell you who was on what record. So,
well, all right.
Sorry to disappoint you.
It's okay. I have a very intimate knowledge of Led Zeppelin. So I guess that's a deep cut joke for me, and it cracked me up.
Yeah.
But
Cameron Crowe compared the Led Zeppelin scene to the shark in Jaws that didn't work.
He said it didn't work?
Yeah.
It worked for me. Maybe it was just too deep of a cut.
I mean, for the people that it did work on, it probably highly appreciated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's that deep. For sure.
Right. It's almost this wink of like, you have to know Led Zeppelin really well to get that this is a Led Zeppelin song, but the wrong album.
Yep.
Should I explain it more to make it funnier, or should we move on?
No, I'm not sure it gets any funnier than it currently is.
Well, that's Fast Times. A funny movie. I can see why it's a classic, but it's not exactly what I was expecting.
Sure. But you got it checked off the list now.
It's checked off the list, both my list and some I Check Movies list, so it feels good.
Apparently he planned on using the song, but Led Zeppelin wouldn't give him permission.
Well, he used it anyway.
No, I mean like the one that I think they told him to play Kashmir.
No, well, he said, okay, he said play side 1, so he had 4 options to choose, or Cameron Crowe had 4 options to choose from because there's 4 tracks in side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4. We're really getting to the minutia of albums and side A and side B, something that does not exist anymore within the world of music.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
One thing I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
Judge Reinhold's in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Segel is a dead ringer for young Judge Reinhold.
For sure.
That was crazy. I was watching this. I'm like, you could have cast Jason Segel in this character and no one would have seen the difference.
Well, Jason Segel would have been 4 or 5 years old when he made this movie. So
yeah, I mean,
you might have known a difference.
I'm just like, if you could digitally take out Judge Reinhold, put in Jason Segel. And I'm sure people walking by would not notice the difference. If watching it, they would obviously figure it out.
Yeah. All right. My number 7 is a documentary titled Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, and Rage. This documentary is on HBO Max, and it's about the Woodstock 99 concert disaster. I don't know, the riots that happened at Woodstock 99. And it's very much a what's that other concert documentary? There's 2 of them that came out a couple of years ago. You know what I'm talking about. Firefest. Firefest.
Oh,
it's very much it's a Firefest style documentary where you're interviewing all the major players, all the organizers, a bunch of the artists that played there, and also fans, and kind of getting the experience of the festival itself and trying to get some kind of, well, the filmmakers try to give you some kind of narrative for why, of all the concerts, did this one devolve from like just a peaceful music festival from the 70s, early 70s, I think, maybe late 60s, I don't remember. That they had that, and then like 20 years later, they had another Woodstock 94, that had very little problems at it. And then in 99, 5 years later, when they tried to go for a third dip, people were not having it, and it turned into, a near riot by night 3. And so it's kind of looking into why that happened. And I remember watching Woodstock 94 and 99 on TV, on pay-per-view, and enjoying it. And I remember in 94, I was 16. In 99, I would have been 20. And by then, rap rock had like completely taken over, or new metal, whatever they're calling it now, had completely taken over. And it was like, there was definitely some angsty music in 94 that was around, that was like post Nirvana, lots of grunge bands, stuff like that. But it was like a whole different level of anger by 99, like between Limp Bizkit and Korn and a bunch of other bands. And yeah, the documentary goes into all that, like whether the bands are at fault, or whether the people booking the concerts are the fault, or maybe the youth had just changed. And why did they change? Why were they, more violent? Or why did the demographic of the concert goers change? Because it was mostly white in 94, but it was more like multicultural. And then by the time 99 rolled around, it was a lot of white dudes and not much else, basically, at that concert. And if in the moment footage of disasters happening with people recanting what they had gone through is your style of documentary, you like music, you like music history on some levels, this will be an interesting watch. It's nothing mind blowing, and there were some moments where I was kind of like, I don't know if I fully agree with that conclusion, but it was a good watch. My number 7.
Cool. My number 6 is a documentary called American Murder, which That sounds like the most pulpy title ever. But I guess this movie is kind of that way anyways. It's the story of this guy who killed his wife and 2 kids. And the next morning, people were worried that they couldn't get a hold of her. And so the police show up like the next day, and he pretends like she ran away and he has no idea. And everything is just on video. And so like him like immediately concocting the story where she like ran away with the kids, or it's like doesn't know what happened to her. And then the movie's about trying to how they figured out that he was lying and catching him in the lie and all that kind of thing. And it's punctuated with all of these pre-recorded videos from his wife from before, just talking about her relationship with her husband, because she kind of like vlogged on Facebook about her life. And so she just has all of this footage of her talking about her marriage and her family and stuff like that. I had heard some stuff about this story. I watched a couple of YouTube videos of it like back a couple of years ago, and it's just so, it's awful and tragic, right? Because this guy is just he killed his whole family just because he like got a girlfriend and he just wanted to switch lives basically. But this movie, I didn't feel like this movie was exploitative. Maybe it is just by the nature of existing, but I didn't feel it was exploitative in how it handled it. But I did think it did a really good job of kind of showing the point by point, how he's lying and then how they discovered it and all that kind of stuff. And it's like a psychological portrait of a sociopath. And like, I don't know, I found it, maybe voyeuristic, but definitely interesting. And yeah, so it's called American Murder, and it was on Netflix.
I've seen this as well. I don't think I got to talk about it because it's one of the movies that like fell through the cracks, but I gave this 4 stars. And what I love about this is that there's no talking heads. It's all constructed from footage and internet videos and interviews and news reports and stuff like that, like put together into the storyline.
Which is always so impressive in a documentary because that's hard to do.
Yeah. Sometimes people lean on the talking head interview to give you context for things. If you can do it without that, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And no reenactments or anything. It's all just footage.
Right.
I think the talking heads are interesting if the subject themselves is really interesting. Like I'm thinking like The Thin Blue Line or something like that. But when you just have experts talking about something that happens, it feels sort of History Channel cable quality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, my number 6. This is a 2017 movie. This was the only perfect Rotten Tomatoes movie until very recently, which is one reason why I watched it, because I want to see what the hubbub was about. And it is Paddington 2.
Nice.
Wait, that's not the only perfect Rotten Tomatoes movie.
No,
it was.
No, it was the only perfect live action Rotten Tomatoes movie. It was the only perfect Rotten Tomatoes movie until someone the last couple months wrote a negative review on it. So like Toy Story 3 now isn't perfect, and there's a bunch of movies that were perfect.
There are a lot that are 100%.
Okay, look up what Paddington 2 had some. Maybe I'm getting the exact detail wrong. So as I'm talking, look up what Paddington 2 had as a status.
All right.
But did lose it. And then let me know. Anyway, I've never seen Paddington, but I heard this was a good kids movie. It was allegedly the only perfect Rotten Tomatoes movie. It's up for dispute right now.
Well, we know that's not true.
Yes. So I thought I'd check it out. And it's about, I remember Paddington being a character when I was a kid. And it's about this, like, kind of like a teddy bear that's come to life that lives with a family in London. And in Paddington 2, it's kind of dark. Paddington gets framed for a robbery and sent to jail, where he is trying to prove his innocence, get out of jail, but is also making marmalade sandwiches with Brendan Gleeson, who's in jail with him. And if I was to like describe the aesthetic of this movie, it's kind of like a Wes Anderson kids movie without that edge of darkness to it. Like it's dark in the sense he gets sent to jail, but Wes Anderson always has like something a little sinister kind of underneath everything. And this movie doesn't have the sinisterness. It just has kind of that Wes Anderson aesthetic. I enjoyed this movie. My son enjoyed this movie, but it is on the middle of my list because I watched it 2 months ago and I can't really tell you much more about it besides like the aesthetic is good. And, it's great seeing Hugh Grant as the bad guy, but it's not like it's not a movie for me where it changed my world. Zach, what accolades did it have on Rotten Tomato?
So it did have 100% on Rotten Tomato.
Okay.
And then it lost that again.
Okay.
But other movies have 100% on Rotten Tomato. My guess is it had the most number of reviews of the ones that had 100%.
Maybe it was like weighted or because they have some weird weighting how they do
Possibly.
movies too.
So like the Philadelphia Story, Rebecca, Singing in the Rain, Seven Samurai, these all currently have 100%.
Okay.
But yeah, so maybe it just some weighting.
Those are all also not Rotten Tomatoes era movies.
Yeah.
Whereas Paddington 2 was.
It definitely is, yeah.
In the Rotten Tomato era. So maybe that's some of the distinction.
And yeah, it's an incredibly watchable, good family movie.
Yeah, it's better than it should be. I think that's the most shocking part of it. It's like when you watch it, you're like, wow, this is actually very charming and interesting in the way that it cribs Wes Anderson's style. And makes it more palatable in a kid's movie kind of way. And then along the way, you get Hugh Grant just acting like a nut.
Yeah.
And kind of pulling it off like in a very fun way. Yeah, I like it. But you guys have heard me like it. So.
Oh, yeah. And I remember hearing you talk about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There are 5 movies in Rotten Tomatoes top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Like adjusted, weighted, rated movies. Can you guess what the 5 modern movies are? You just have to get one of the 5.
Is Black Panther one of them?
Yep.
Okay.
It's number 3.
Wow. How about Endgame?
Endgame is on it. That's number 7.
Oh,
let's go Infinity War.
Nope.
Okay.
Is that
Definitely
it for the
not
Marvel? That's it for the Marvel movies, right?
That's it for the Marvel movies.
Right.
I'll tell you genres, okay? We have a foreign film. We have a mystery and a horror film.
Is
The
Get
Witch?
Out the horror movie?
No,
The Witch?
not The Witch.
Lighthouse?
Nope.
Us?
Nope. Us, yes. Us is number 10.
Okay.
We have the mystery left. It's getting 2 sequels.
Knives Out.
Knives Out, yep. And then the foreign film won a prestigious award.
Parasite.
Yeah, Parasite. Okay. Nice.
Interesting. My number 6 is not going to win any awards. It's A Quiet Place 2. Part 2. Not that I hated it, but it's just not going to win any awards. Directed and written
It's not going to win any awards.
I don't think so. Maybe.
Okay.
But I'd be surprised. Hasn't yet, according to Wikipedia.
Hasn't yet.
Yeah, so written and directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt again, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe, which I think those are the carryovers from the first movie. New cast is Cillian Murphy and Digimon Hansu. And if you saw the first A Quiet Place and you enjoyed it, I think you'd enjoy this one as well. It feels like very much like an extension of that one. But I do feel like the absence of John Krasinski in the movie is felt quite a bit. Like it's more of like a road movie where they're being chased from one place to another, as opposed to like, how are they going to ingeniously stay in one place and be safe? And the chase movie can be interesting, but I don't know. It just seemed slightly less interesting than the first go around. And it also helps that there's a little mystery around the villains, the antagonists in the first one. And by the beginning of the second one, their vulnerabilities have been made known. And so you lose that mystery. There's just a lot less mystery in this one than there was in the first one. And so it's lesser in my book, but still enjoyed it. My number 6.
Cool. I did not care for the ending of A Quiet Place. And I mean ending, I mean the last shot, which is of Emily Blunt cocking a shotgun with her like, let's go get him face on. Because to me, that just telegraphed that the sequel is going to be less of the how do we fight this unknown monster and more of, okay, we know how to defeat it. How do we now defeat this monster? Which sounds a lot more boring and less interesting than the mystery like you just said. So sounds like they followed suit with that final scene.
It's less, they're definitely not hunting monsters.
Okay.
In part 2, they're still surviving. They just realize that they can't stay at the farm, that they have to like find other people in order to really get to a place where they feel safe again. And so movie goes from there.
I thought that final shot of the first movie was awesome. It was like, sweet. Go get him. Anyways. Okay, my number 5 has already been mentioned. It is the documentary Woodstock 99. I felt very similar to James. I had somewhat awareness of this. I think I vaguely remember this going on, like as an MTV thing. And I do remember it being like kind of a disaster, or like definitely not Woodstock kind of a thing. Anyway, watching this documentary, I thought was super informative, right? You saw a lot of what went wrong. I mean, just like the bathrooms overflowing, and there wasn't, it was just a very, I don't know, testosterone filled kind of event, and very, like the type of music that was playing was nothing like the type of music that was playing at the original Woodstock, and all of that stuff was there. So that was pretty interesting. I do think that I don't know, it didn't always connect the dots in a satisfying way for me. Like it would say like, oh, Limp Bizkit gets blamed for starting the riots or whatever, but maybe it was these other factors. But then it's not really showing like full out riots or anything. I never got to a point where like, okay, now things are out of control and it came from this moment. It was more just like, and this was bad, and then there were some fires and that was bad. It's just like, I don't know. But I definitely enjoyed it, and it was super interesting to watch. And it is certainly a cultural artifact, right? Like that absolutely was a period of time, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, that I definitely recognize. You know what I mean? Like all of that was very familiar, even if I wasn't in the rap rock scene. So
and it really came and went. I mean, it was like, it had like a 3-year shelf life, and it was mostly gone from mainstream culture very quickly.
Yeah. I did really, if it had one point to make, it was that there was this whole generation of like middle-class white boys that were angry, but really had no reason to be angry. And so they had nothing to fuel their their anger towards. Like they just had no real reason to be angry, but they were. And so I found that to be an interesting point.
They were angsty, but being middle-class white boys, nothing in their life nothing's holding them down. So they had no way to channel that rage.
Yeah.
Do you think the movie downplayed the fires and the riots that happened towards the end of the festival, or do you think the media overplayed the story of Woodstock 99?
I don't think it was overplayed.
Okay.
Yeah. And the movie definitely shows, a lot of, terrible things happening for sure. Yeah, I don't think it was overplayed by the media or really overblown by the movie. I think it's just, maybe the way that it paced itself was so episodic, like, okay, this is day 1, day 2, day 3, rather than showing this like ratcheting up of the craziness. I don't know. James, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I honestly, my favorite interview in the documentary is the guy who participated in the rioting. They only show him a little bit at the end, and he's like, on a normal day, I would have never done any of these things, but for some reason, by day 3, I would have done anything. If somebody was doing it next to me, I would have done anything because they were just so out of control at that point.
There was a point that if someone from stage said, kill the person next to you,
they probably would have done it. Yeah.
15,000 dead people. Right?
Because they were just so out of control.
Were there 30,000 people there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Well, I've added to my watch list since both of you watched and talked about it and seemed to enjoy it. And again, that's an era I do remember. I was a little bit more into I had a Limp Bizkit album on CD. I'll admit to that. So
it's the first album. Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water is the first album I downloaded and then burned to CD.
From Napster?
Yep.
Great taste.
It took me like 4 hours to download that album.
Right, because you have to do one at a time with like your 26 or 52K dial-up modem.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. I think the first song I ever downloaded on Napster was Rock Superstar by Cypress Hill.
Sure. Well, that's a better track than mine for sure.
Yeah.
The
first song I ever downloaded on Napster was Ray of Light by Madonna.
Hey, I like that song.
It's a good song.
It's a good music video too.
Yep.
I used to use this. Oh, what was it called? I used to use this like an early Pro Tools program for music where you would like mix loops. It was by Sonic Foundry, which is based out of Madison, and they don't exist anymore. It's
was
called
that your dad? Did your dad work for them?
No, Acid Music. That's what it was called.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, he didn't work for them. But Acid Music had a competition where they gave you tracks, like broken out tracks from Ray of Light, and you had to remix it yourself, like on your home computer. And it was so much fun. And like people posted, they posted all their tracks on like message boards and commented on them, and it was super positive. And so the internet was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My number 5. This is groundbreaking because I'm including a rewatch on my top 10 last 10. Everyone take a moment.
Breaking.
You heard it here first. I know I've come out kind of anti-rewatch before, but I was rewatching this movie. It's a movie I've not seen since, and I want to say 30 years, almost 28 years I haven't seen this movie. And it's a movie that I think deserves a reassessment almost 30 years later. And this is The Last Action Hero from 1993.
I love that movie.
So the last time I saw Last Action Hero was 1993. I was 10 years old. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And it's about a boy who lives in like the real world, in our world, who loves this fake Arnold Schwarzenegger character called Jack. Oh, I can't remember the name is. It's some, Jack Slater. That's his name. But again, Arnold Schwarzenegger exists in this world as an actor. So this kid knows he's watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, Jack Slater. And Jack Slater is every like 90s movie trope you can imagine on the screen. Well, this boy gets a magical movie ticket and he gets sucked into the movie of Jack Slater and is trying to convince Jack Slater that you're not real. This is a movie. And like, look at all these rules. And then they come out of the movie with Jack Slater, who's now in the real world, and he's trying to figure out, like why are the rules different now? Why can't I drive a car on 2 wheels, or why does getting shot actually injure me? Things like that. When this movie came out in 93, I don't think people got it because this movie is a complete satire of like overblown 90s action movies. So it's starring Arnold. He's making fun of himself. He's making fun of the characters he plays. It's directed by John McTiernan, right? Who's most well known for Die Hard. So like 2 guys who made their careers on making serious cop action movies are now like completely satirizing the whole genre and sort of picking it apart for everything that's fake about it. And it's funny, and it calls out all these tropes that are obvious in action movies. And I just don't think in 1993, when, you know, this is 2 years after Terminator 2, I don't think audiences were ready to see Arnold Schwarzenegger poke fun at himself. And I think that's one reason why this movie got panned and it flopped. But it's worth watching again. It's got an awesome soundtrack too. Like, it starts off and Alice in Chains is playing, and then AC/DC comes on, Anthrax comes on, Megadeth comes on. Like, all these great sort of metal and grunge bands from the early 90s are on this Schwarzenegger blockbuster. I don't know, Zach, you said you like this movie. James, have you watched Last Action Hero again recently? Or do you remember what are your thoughts on it?
Depends on what your definition of recent is. Like within the last 10 years I've seen it, but wasn't last week, that's for sure.
Have you watched it in our post-ironic meta era? Because this movie is very much meta and ironic, but 10 years before, those were buzzwords.
I think I appreciate the premise far more than I appreciate the humor.
Okay.
Or the cleverness of the movie. And I think it works as an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie with like a little bit of satire to it. But whenever they try to actually make a like obvious joke, it kind of falls flat for me. But
a little heavy-handed in that sense.
A little contrived, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Like, who's expecting high art? I don't know who was. Not me. How do you feel about it, Zach?
I like it a lot. I think it's fun.
Did
it's a lot of fun.
Did you like it in 93?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember this kind of like this movie being forgetful in 1993. So, I don't know. I'm glad I watched it again. It was a lot of fun.
What's your star rating for it?
I gave it 4 stars. Just because it was way better than I was expecting. I think I was going with low expectations, and it's fun. Like, you've got Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister is playing the bad guy. Ian McKellen pops up as Death from Seventh Seal. He is able to step out of a movie. I had no idea who Ian McKellen was when I was 10 years old, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger's playing himself at one point and like poking fun at his 1993 persona, where like his wife at the time, Maria Shriver, leans over and is like, "Hey, don't talk about the restaurant. It sounds tacky." And then right away he starts plugging Planet Hollywood, which is such an artifact of the 90s. So,
sure.
Yeah,
so maybe it's a movie that gets better in context of all these other things that were, not as obvious at the moment.
Yeah. And like, we've all seen the joke of like, why do people never have to reload in action movies? Why don't bullets ever hurt anyone? And so like, if you watch it now, you're gonna be like, well, these jokes aren't fresh. But I think if you watched it, if you think of it in 1993 context, these are very fresh jokes for the time.
Hmm. My number 5 is a Netflix movie titled Beckett, starring John David Washington, and Alicia Vikander is also in the movie. Not much, but she's in it. Mainly John David Washington, though, aka the guy from BlacKkKlansman. And it's about this guy who is a tourist in Greece, and something happens and he has to go on the run in Greece. And he's being chased by police officers who want to capture him. And so it's a chase movie about somebody who's completely fish out of water, basically. He doesn't know Greek, and he's a black guy in Greece. He's maybe the only black person in the entire movie. And so he's super easy to chase, for sure. I mean, he's hard to hide in that world. And, he's been separated from his resources as far as money goes and stuff like that. So he's literally just on the run. And I'm leaving out a lot of details because a lot of the fun of the movie is experiencing it with him. And it probably would be higher because they kind of kept it very simple throughout the vast majority of the movie, and then right at the end they overcomplicated things for no reason whatsoever, which was kind of annoying. But I enjoyed the journey and running along with this guy. It just also has a little bit of like a 70s action movie style to it, meaning that I don't think if there is computer graphics, it's so seamless that it feels as if it's not there. Like, it's very possible that they shot this movie and there's not a single computer graphic in it. It's just anything you can do practically, that's what they were doing. And he's also not an action hero at all. And so there are moments where you would expect things to be smooth. And it feels like a 70s thriller. They just take a couple seconds on every shot than like your modern action movies, your Jason Bournes and stuff like that. And this guy never wakes up and has a power that he didn't have yesterday, type of thing. He's the same schlub at the beginning of the movie as he is at the end. He's just one that has managed to survive. It's good. It's enjoyable. I liked it. Alicia Vikander's pretty wasted in it, but other than that, I enjoyed it.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll check that out. My number 4 is from 1993, and it is The Pelican Brief.
This is the first time you watch this?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never seen this.
Really? This is a classic for me.
It is? Okay. This is stars Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington, and it's based on a book by John Grisham. And this movie is very plot heavy, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's got a very complicated series of events, but it's a thriller. So I found it very gripping, actually. It's super long. It's like 2.5 hours long, which I think is longer than it needs to be. And it doesn't, there's a MacGuffin. The Pelican Brief is a paper that Julia Roberts writes, and they don't tell you until halfway through the movie what the Pelican Brief is about, like what the subject matter of her paper is, kind of a thing. You just know that anyone who reads it gets killed. And the movie starts with 2 Supreme Court justices are assassinated in the same night. Mm-hmm. And Julia Roberts has a theory about why that happened. And so she writes the Pelican Brief, and then anyone that gets their hands on this brief gets murdered. And so she's on the run. Denzel Washington plays a reporter who is trying to like track down the story with her, kind of a thing. I found it really good. I definitely was intrigued, interested the whole time. I mean, it was long, but I wanted to know how it was going to end up, where it was going to go. It gets a little repetitive, maybe, was just like, okay, we're following a guy and then they get killed. And then here's a potential lead and then they get killed. And it's just like, okay, when are we going to get there? But I liked it. And they don't make these kind of slow burn thrillers very much anymore. And so I appreciated it from that aspect. Rated PG-13, Pelican Brief. I liked it.
I've heard of it. It's like a 90s artifact kind of movie, but
it didn't feel dated to me.
It did not. Okay.
No, it didn't feel cheesy. It's still well acted and well, I mean, it's still a thriller.
It aged well. That's good.
Yeah, it aged well.
Cool. I might need to check it out then. These are like movies, anything that came out in the early 90s, I remember hearing about, but I was just a little too young to be watching like PG-13 movies.
Yeah.
Before like 92. So.
Yeah. And Julia Roberts plays a 24-year-old. It's just like weird. My brain couldn't comprehend her that young.
But she was 24.
Yeah, totally. It just.
I think she was even younger in Pretty Woman.
I haven't seen Pretty Woman.
You haven't?
No.
So is Julia Roberts like Ocean's 11 and older for you?
Yeah, she's like Conspiracy Theory and Ocean's 11. Yeah.
Conspiracy Theory was like 5 years after Pelican Brief.
Yeah.
So she's 29, but not 24. You can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what's conspiracy theory? What year was that?
98 or 99.
Okay. 97.
97. Okay, so even closer. All right, so 28-year-old Julia Roberts, you're on board with, but 24, I can't imagine.
Just seems young.
Okay.
I mean, keep in mind that in 97, 28 was a lot older than me. And now in 2021, 24 is a lot younger than me, right? So you're judging it from like those perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Just seems like a complicated math problem.
Yeah.
If I was 10 in 1994, and all right. My number 4 is a noir film from 1953, and this is The Big Heat, directed by Fritz Lang. This is about a police detective. I think his name is Rex Banyan, played by Glenn Ford, and he's investigating a crime syndicate that seems to have gotten its tentacles into the upper echelons of the police force. And as any good noir, he starts to kind of pull that thread and follow it deeper and deeper and deeper, and to see kind of how far down the rabbit hole he can go to find out what's really at the center of this whole crime syndicate. What made this movie different than a noir, though, is how personal it was for the Glenn Ford character. Because usually your hard-boiled detective in these movies is a little detached from what's actually going on. Like, he's hired to check this out. He may fall in love with someone along the way, but usually the detective gets kind of pulled into the story and the story's not about them. But in The Big Heat, something early in the movie happens that makes this noir story very personal for the detective, where he becomes like this man with nothing to lose, and he's going to go at any length he can to figure out, who's at the end of this long thread of the noir. So I think you can best describe this as almost like a brutal noir, because everyone's just mean to each other. Everyone's, just like trying to kill each other. This is a surprisingly violent movie for 1953, but because it's the 50s, Fritz Lang can't show that violence. So he does an incredible job of implying it without actually like showing you exactly what's happening. Like, the movie opens with an overhead shot of a desk, and there's a gun sitting on the desk, and you see a hand reach forward, pick the gun up, it goes off frame, you hear a gunshot, and then a body flops over on top of the desk. So like right away, okay, this movie starts and a guy shoots himself. Obviously he can't show that happen, so he does a great way of framing it so you know exactly what happened without actually seeing it. So Fritz Lang is a great director. I love noirs. It's one of my favorite genres, and this one definitely is up there for me.
Sweet. Nice. What's it called?
The Big Heat.
The Big Heat. I think I've heard of that.
Not to be confused with White Heat or The Big Sleep.
Or
Sure.
Heat.
Or Heat. Or Big.
I love Heat.
The Michael Mann movie?
Yeah.
Or just The Temperature?
I definitely don't love The Temperature. It's brutal today in Florida, for sure. My number 4 is Riders of Justice from 2020. Have you guys heard of this?
Never.
It is a Danish action dark comedy movie starring Mads Mikkelsen, amongst others. And I don't want to give you too much about the plot, but I'll give you this. Mads Mikkelsen plays like a former military guy who has a very good reason to want to get revenge on kind of like the local crime gang in his town. And he has these 4 guys who are very nerdy, who also have their own individual reasons to want to get revenge on this crime syndicate in town. And so they kind of like team up together and get revenge, even though the only one that's capable of getting physical revenge on people, like who is good at fighting, is Mads Mikkelsen. Everybody else is nerdy. And so the nerdy guys do the homework to help him exact revenge for them, kind of. And the comedy comes in as far as the play between a hardcore military guy who's super capable of literally dispatching anybody at any time, having to team up with these super awkward, nerdy guys who are not used to being around as much bravado as he brings to the table, type of thing. And it was funny. It's a shockingly violent movie, kind of probably in a similar way that the Suicide Squad was. And so if you don't like dark comedy, there's a lot of it in this. And not only is it dark comedy, but it's like European style dark comedy because the movie's in Danish. It's a Danish film. It's not in English. It's helpful to have Mads Mikkelsen at the center as far as that goes, because he's a very recognizable face to me anyway. And so having a movie star and not having it be complete unknowns gave me some connective tissue into the movie. But I enjoyed it. It was a fun watch. Not a movie that I think would be released here in the United States because of just probably not very marketable to a big audience. But I enjoyed it. Riders of Justice, which is the name of the gang, by the way. Riders of Justice. That's the gang that they're trying to exact revenge on. It's like a motorcycle gang.
That's a good name for a motorcycle gang.
Yeah. But it's kind of a double meaning because, of course, they're the ones actually getting the justice.
Yeah. All right. Kyle was very impressed with himself for upending the game with having to rewatch in his list. So let's see how proud he is of me when I have a TV show as my number 3.
Goodbye.
For my number 3, I'm doing a season of a TV show.
Wait, okay. This podcast is called Cinereelists, not televisists.
Yeah, that's true. Cinereelists, and I'm going to keep it real with you. This is the real part of it.
Keep it real, bro.
This is the real part of it, not the cine part of it. My number 3 is a series of television, and it is so good that I had to talk about it. And this is my outlet to talk about it. I didn't put it as number 1 for a couple reasons. One, it's a TV show, and I don't want to put a TV show as my number 1 quite yet. But number 2, it's not for everybody. That's for sure. But it was for me. It's called The Show About the Show. And this is a show that airs on Brick TV, BRIC TV, which is like a New York kind of public access, not public access, but like a New York specific channel, right? It's probably like all, Bronx related things. I don't know what it is. And it's all on YouTube. Like if you search The Show About the Show, the first thing that comes up is a YouTube playlist with all of the episodes. There's like 12 episodes, I think, in the first season. And every episode is less than 15 minutes long. So like it's super easy to just kind of breeze through. And by the time you watch it all, it's like a movie length. And I am shocked that the views that this show has. Every episode has like 60,000 views. And that just blows me away for how amazing this show is. It's so good. Here's the premise of the show. It's a documentary about the making of the show. Okay, so that's why it's called The Show About the Show. The first episode is about how the show got greenlit. So like how they sold the show to Brick TV. Then the second episode is how they made episode 1. And then the third episode is how they made episode 2, and it goes on from there. So it's super meta, and it's so funny and creative. And let's say in episode 2, right? It's about the making of the first episode. If someone in real life that was involved in the making of the first episode doesn't agree to be on camera, then they just hire an actor to like play him and perform his parts. And so it's a mix of like the actual people like reenacting what they did in the previous episode and footage from like when it was actually happening and actors pretending to be people of like what actually happened. And the guy who made this, his name's Kaveh. He's so committed to like the truth of what he's doing that he's just brutally honest throughout the entire thing. So he will say like exactly what happened and what he was thinking about as it was happening. So if he's married and if he met someone that he thought was like attractive, he would talk about that. And then his wife would like be upset at him because she'd watched the episode. And so the next episode, he would talk about what his conversations with his wife were about, like what he said in the previous episode. And then eventually she stops wanting to be on camera. And so he has an actress play his wife, reenacting arguments that they're having. It just goes into such crazy territory. It's kind of like Charlie Kaufman-esque.
This word was he was coming to my mind as you're describing this.
Yeah, like Synecdoche, New York, but funny. You definitely get into a groove where it feels less meta and more just interesting. Like it feels less of a gimmick the more you watch it, and instead it just starts to become it seems like one of the most exciting kind of artistic things that I've seen recently. I was super impressed. I'm shocked that it's not like more popular than it is. But yeah, it's really funny. It's very quick and fast paced. And the central guy, the creator, Kaveh, is very like a lot of it is him talking or describing what's happening, that kind of thing. And he's just a super interesting dude. And I want to seek out some of the more films he made. I think he's a film professor at some New York college or at New York something. But yeah, I found the whole thing super interesting. Now, a couple warnings. It gets into some pretty like adult themes at certain points. So I wouldn't recommend this to anyone that's just doesn't want to see any of that. And then sure. And then it's also like it's brutally honest. And so like, he in some ways kind of destroys his life, by just being committed to like what he's doing. And that could be hard to watch, but I think it's so good. And I was, really happy that I stumbled across this. So it's called The Show About the Show. It's all on YouTube. If you Google that, or if you can find Brick TV, you can find it there. But yeah, every episode is like 15 minutes long. So it's really easy to watch. And by the fourth episode was when I was really hooked, for sure.
Cool.
Sounds exhausting.
Oh, it's not at all. It's super easy to watch. It's super funny, and it's very brisk.
Yeah. Only 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, back to movies.
Oh, do you have you watch another movie again, like
Zach,
Aladdin or
not only did you talk about a TV show, but it was a YouTube TV show.
It's a YouTube series.
Guys, get into the 21st century.
You think Kyle's going to be happy about? Oh, I'm fine with it. But Kyle, I mean, you double whammied on that one.
Yeah, a TV show that's on YouTube. No, thank you.
Meanwhile,
check,
I already
please.
saved the playlist to my account, Zach. I will check it out.
I don't even know if I have a YouTube account. I think Google just forces me to log in every time I go there. All right. My number 3 is a 2021 movie. I am positive James is going to talk about this because, James, you recommended this to us. I believe a listener also wrote in and recommended it, and this is Coda. Is this your number 3 also, James?
No, it's not.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, I'll try and leave a little bit for you to talk about too. I'll kind of give a basic premise and my take on it. Then I want to hear what you have to say too. This is a movie about a high school girl who lives in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is a big fishing town, and she is part of a family of fishermen. So her brother, mother, father, they're all part of the fisherman business. The thing is, her brother, mother, father, her family are all deaf, and she is hearing. So she is kind of relied on as in the family to be their interpreter, their translator, so they can do business, they could interact with the hearing world, and the hearing world can interact with them. At the same time, she is, being in high school, wants to pursue her own interests and has this love of singing, which is irony because her family's deaf. They don't know that she's a good singer. So she's really torn between, do I stick around and help my family who rely on me because, I'm the only hearing person here, or do I pursue my dream of, at least going to school and being a singer? That sounds a little boilerplate, but it does take a little bit more with that story. Like, for one thing, the family, they're not just sort of oblivious to her dreams. They kind of guilt her into sticking around, of being like, we need you. You're our interpreter. You're like, how we're supposed to interact with the rest of the world. So she's definitely feeling like extreme pressure from her family. But also, like, the family themselves are super fun and interesting to hang out with. I know you have Marlee Matlin, who's probably the most famous deaf actor that people can name. She plays the mother, and then you also have a great actor who's I've never seen before playing the father and the brother. And this father, he is a crude fisherman, but instead of saying crude things, he is signing crude things, and it is hilarious. And like just to watch how the family and she interact with the world is such a fun and heartwarming and good story. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. I enjoyed it as well. It's gonna be higher on my list, but I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
Now it's not on YouTube yet.
It seems hard unavailable.
I know, you might have to wait a little bit.
Okay.
My number 3 is on Netflix. It's from 2021. It's Blood Red Sky, which is a vampire movie set in an airplane. And it was
that's the pitch right there.
It was super fun. It very much felt like a movie that should have come out in 2002. I mean, it's that style filmmaking, I would say. And it's also a foreign film. I don't think it wasn't in English. Doesn't really matter. It's not exactly a talkie, but I enjoyed my time with this movie. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than, like, if you like 30 Days of Night and those types of movies from that era, this is a new one of those that just came out, and it's pretty silly and stupid on paper. And in execution, still silly and stupid, but it'll waste your time for a little while. And that's what I expected of it, and that's what I got. I enjoyed it. My number 3.
Nice. Okay, my number 2 is a movie that is playing right now on Amazon Prime, and it is called The Tomorrow War. It's a 2021 film. This is like a huge blockbuster that, like, didn't get any advertising at all until, like, right before it was released on Amazon Prime. So I just didn't even know it was happening. And I think probably a lot of people have watched it if you, like, are watching Prime, but it's just not getting talked about at all. And I assumed going into it that it would just be terrible, like super schlocky. And I watched it, and I actually found myself really enjoying it. I thought it was a perfectly fun version of this kind of movie. So it stars Chris Pratt, and J.K. Simmons is also in it. And essentially what it is all of a sudden, people from the future, from 30 years in the future, show up in our world and say, we are losing a war against aliens, and this will be the end of humanity unless we can draft you to come into the future and fight for us, because we are not going to make it. And so it becomes this, like, existential threat to humanity, that knowing that, like, if we don't do everything we can right now to fight in the future we're going to be extinct. And so they start drafting people and like forcing people to go and do these very short stints in the future against an alien invasion that is completely destroying them. Like they're almost like have zero chance of beating these aliens. They're so much stronger than the humans. And so you're essentially just drafting people to go to their deaths. It's definitely a suicide mission. And it just all seems very dire. Anyway, Brad Pitt, he goes and he's pretty good at it. He's just like well suited for the role.
Brad Pitt?
No, Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris Pratt.
I mean, like cameo spoiler right there.
Right. Yeah, no cameo from Brad Pitt. Yeah. So it's just it's an action movie. It's kind of like Edge of Tomorrow sensibility a little bit. It's got that time travel stuff and there's just like Edge of Tomorrow where it's Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt and they're kind of like this pair that fight the bad alien. In this one it's Chris Pratt and how do you say your Yvonne Strahovski?
Yvonne Strahovski.
Yeah. Who I had seen before. I think, is she the one in the canyon?
Yep.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she's also on Handmaid's Tale and was on a couple seasons of Dexter.
Okay. I didn't watch either of those, but I did really like The Canyon, which is a genre film that James pointed out to me. And yeah, she's great in this as well. And I think they work really well together. And I just had a lot of fun watching The Tomorrow War. So I think it is worth a look, especially if you just kind of dismissed it as like, oh, well, this is just a silly Amazon Prime movie.
Yeah.
I did dismiss it as a silly Amazon Prime movie. I didn't realize it was this huge blockbuster that if we weren't in a pandemic probably would have been pushed into theaters and made, a couple $100 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been.
But then I got relegated to streaming services.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a silly movie. Don't get it twisted for sure. And it's also from my memory. I've seen it as well. It's also from my memory a movie that should end a full act before it ends, in my opinion. Like before they portal back, the movie should be over at that point, and it keeps going for like another half an hour.
It's like you don't even have to wait for the sequel. It's fantastic.
Yeah, maybe that's one word for it. I was less impressed than Zach, I would say, but we'll never know. If you want to see a lot of money on the screen, I mean, Amazon paid $200 million for this movie, and I doubt they got $200 million out of it.
No, I think it's like the #1 streamed movie of the year across all platforms.
Across all platforms? Well, then why isn't anybody talking about it?
I don't know.
Because everybody streams it and shrugs their shoulders and it's like, yep.
Yeah, I think streamers just don't have the same buzz as, at big releases.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, like Bird Box got talked about. There's not a lot of them that get talked about, but there are breakout movies that get talked about here and there.
Yeah, but Amazon Prime doesn't really. Netflix sucks a lot of oxygen.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like Amazon Prime still seems their video service still seems like a bonus service to the free delivery. Like while you're getting free delivery, here, watch a movie. I know that's changed a lot, but the TV side of, or the video side of things always seemed like the afterthoughts to the delivery part. Obviously, that's switching now, and as streaming wars are heating up.
I just canceled Prime this week.
Why? Can't imagine.
Because he saw Tomorrowland or Tomorrow War and was done.
Yeah, I was like, once you peak. No, I don't know. I didn't want to spend, $15 every month.
I think there's also ethical implications to Prime, which we can't get into right now.
All right. Kyle, your number two?
My number two, what we can talk about, though, is my number two, which is a 1962 movie by Louis Buñuel. This is The Exterminating Angel. Buñuel is a director who I am mixed on. I've seen probably 5 of his movies now, and some I like, and some I do not care for. I'm not sure if it's the top 10 last 10 or one before that, but I also talked about The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, also Buñuel film. Did not care for that one. This is another class social satire by Buñuel, but I enjoyed it much, much more. For one, no dream sequences, thank goodness. So thank you, Buñuel, because he uses those a fair amount in his movies. Did not use dream sequences in this one. The plot to The Exterminating Angel is you have a group of upper class socialites who all get together for a dinner, and they enjoy their meal. They have their after drinks. They're kind of hanging out, and no one's leaving the house. In fact, no one's leaving the dining room. And at first the hosts are kind of weirded out, like, why aren't people going home? Why are they taking their coats off and sleeping on the couches? Why are they still here in the morning? And then they slowly realize that they can't leave the room. Like anytime someone tries to leave the room, they physically can't. Either they think of something they have to do, or they get to the edge of the dining room and they think, I'm not going to leave, and they just stay. And these people start to panic because they are trapped in a dining room. All the servants are gone. There is no one. The outside world has realized something's going on, but they don't know what's going on, so they're not going in. And it kind of devolves into sort of this Lord of the Flies atmosphere where people are doing anything they can to survive in this small dining room. And I don't know. It's Buñuel. He makes social satires. Like, most of his movies are about class and often about, let's sort of poke fun at the rich and reveal who they really are. And this one, for whatever reason, just totally worked for me. I was invested in this story. I was interested by all the different, characters who are there at this party. Like, there's a married couple, there's a couple who's dating, there's another couple having an affair within the group, and they're all trying to hide their own secrets. People are trying to piece together why can't they leave? Is it aliens? Is it magic? Is it God? This movie is a template for the Darren Aronofsky movie Mother, which is kind of the same idea of why can't we leave a house? Aronofsky's got the whole allegory thing going on. This has got more of the satire stuff going on. But I also appreciated that it's not with The Discreet Charm of Bourgeoisie, everyone's trying to, each scene, they're trying to sit down to eat a meal, and something goes on that causes them to not eat that meal. But it's more like they get interrupted or distracted, where this movie is they literally cannot leave. There's no interruption, distraction. They are trapped in this room. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It was a good watch.
Oh yeah.
Cool. I added it to my watch list. I'll check it out. My number 2 is another documentary from this year. It's Val, based on Val Kilmer's career. Basically, it's like a career retrospective.
Yeah, I'm halfway through that.
It's good. It's another one that's very little interview footage. I would say it's mostly kind of raw footage, a lot of which Val Kilmer himself, the actor, captured on sets of movies that he participated in, particularly in the 80s and 90s. And it just kind of goes through his early life and how much he used to tell stories with his brother who passed away, which I didn't know that he had a older brother who passed away when he was 15 or something like that. And how the whole movie kind of has this context of this is what he used to do with his brother, is tell stories on camera. So there's a lot of footage of them younger telling stories. And then as he grows up and becomes an actor and then finds success at it, he continued to film things on his own while becoming a famous actor. And so it's interesting to see lots of behind the scenes footage shot by the people who are in the things that you enjoyed. So the types of movies that you get to see rare footage of are like Top Gun. Like there's some shots of Tom Cruise in here that are just like, he's unrecognizable as the guy that we know today. I would say there's this crazy scene where he's out on the back porch in some other country and Val Kilmer is filming Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise is just dancing a fool in front of the camera. And I'm just like, this just does not exist in my world. Tom Cruise dancing like this. Anyway, so there's if you're a big fan of like Top Gun, Batman, Heat, just all the Val Kilmer movies you would expect, Unforgiven, those types of movies, there's a bunch of behind the scenes footage, and not your typical promo behind the scenes footage, like footage shot by Val Kilmer himself. And there's also a lot of modern day footage of Val Kilmer, who's dealing with the after effects of throat cancer. He's throat cancer free at this point, but it's pretty much destroyed his voice. And so he's talking through a voice box. A good deal of the documentary is narrated by his son. So it's his writing, but his son is reading it. And occasionally it'll cut back to Val and Val will get out a sentence or two, but the vast majority of it is narration by his son. And it's a little bit of like has a touch of like a tone poem feel to it. Where
sure.
Where he's
like his art.
Yeah, he's not telling it to you straight. Exactly. Occasionally he kind of dips into like artistic musings on what it means to be an actor and things like that. So it's not a documentary biopic. It's not completely straightforward in that way. And I enjoyed kind of like the artistic slant on it. It's not my favorite documentary of an actor, I would say. Like I think Love and Tasha affected me more than this one, probably because Love and Tasha was made by people who loved I'm drawing a blank on that guy's public name.
Anton Yelchin.
Yeah. So Love and Tasha was made by people who loved Anton Yelchin, and Anton Yelchin died tragically. And so they're literally making a love letter to him, essentially. Whereas in this one, you have an actor musing on his own career and doing it in kind of a very artsy, artistic, maybe could be interpreted pretentious way. I think you give Val Kilmer a break because he just seems like that kind of guy. Like it doesn't seem like he's forcing that. It seems like from day one, he's just always been that dude. And so I think he gets away with it with me. As far as I'm concerned, he gets away with it in this movie. But I enjoyed my time with the movie and learning more about Val Kilmer and understanding why he made the choices he did. And I liked it. My number 2.
I'm only halfway through that film, but I would say a major complaint I have, I'm enjoying it, but a major complaint I have is the fact that it is told from Val Kilmer's perspective. He's talking about himself. He very much so far ignores the fact that he notoriously was awful to work with. Like there were some sets that like people hated working with him. And so far he has not gone into that at all. Does he do it later in the documentary?
He addresses being considered a difficult actor.
Okay.
He's never going to give you, and I was wrong.
Okay.
It sounds like he's saying, I'm sorry that you found me to be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it's more like this is a difficult profession. And once you get labeled a difficult actor, it's hard to get work. And I was labeled a difficult actor, but I only was trying to get the best work. So you can like me for that or you can hate me for that. But that was my goal, not just to be difficult. So I think the movie generally leaves it to you to decide, but there's very little footage of him being there's no footage of him being difficult for you to judge on your own.
I gotcha.
But there is footage later on that you probably haven't seen that's way saucier as far as the backstage footage of heated moments on sets.
Okay.
That come later in the documentary. Like there's a whole section on the island of Dr. Moreau, which is a movie that most people haven't seen, but was very troubled. And there's footage in there of like fights during the filming of Island of Dr. Moreau, and footage of what's his name? Like one of his last movies, The Godfather.
Marlon
Brando. Yeah. There's footage of him getting to work with Marlon Brando, which was like a career highlight for him, but amongst a movie that nothing was going right on.
Have you seen the documentary about the making of The Island of Dr. Moreau called Lost Soul?
No, but it's on my list. I need to.
You have to check it out. It's such a good documentary, especially if you've seen Island of Dr. Moreau and you've heard a little bit about the craziness behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And
it's made by the director that got kicked off, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then would put on costumes and sneak back on set.
Oh, as like one of the animals?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Zach, you and I have seen a lot of movies together, but I distinctly remember seeing that with you. And being like, what are we watching?
Yeah. Yeah. In college, I gathered all my friends together and it's like, guys, I want to show you the scariest movie I have ever seen. And I forced maybe about 18 people to watch this movie with me. And then when it was over, I was like, oh, I remember now. It wasn't the scariest movie I've ever seen. It was the like most disturbing movie I've ever seen.
It's disturbing.
It's so disturbing. Ugh. Yeah. It just leaves you with just a really bad taste in your mouth after watching it. And I think universally all 18 people were very upset at me for making them watch it. Including myself.
Low-Buy.
Yeah.
Low-Buy doesn't listen. Or whatever he says or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a fan. But yeah.
Zach, what's your favorite movie of the last 10 you watched?
You want to know?
I do.
I'll tell you.
I want to know.
All right, bro. Here you go.
Lay it on me, bro. Broseph.
It's from 2021. It's rated R. It stars Matt Damon. It's called Stillwater.
All right. I can't wait to hear this.
I'm glad you told me it was rated R. I can't watch it now. Ask my mom.
R for really good, bro.
Okay. You can stop calling me bro now. You've lost your opportunity.
How?
Really good.
I don't speak bro. Matt Damon plays a roughneck, oil rig kind of guy from Oklahoma, who travels to France where his daughter is in prison for murdering her girlfriend. And he's a bad father, just a screw up. And but he cares about his daughter. And he feels bad that she's in prison, and she asks him to help find the real killer, and he wants to do that for her. But he's definitely a fish out of water in Paris, and I'm not describing at all how the movie comes across. Like it's not a fish out of water, like he's just a kind of a rough guy who's kind of just messed up everything in his life, and he wants to do this right, and he's just completely unable. He's not up to the task, and his daughter's depending on him. His daughter definitely is not expecting anything from him. And it's, first of all, I think it's a really good Matt Damon performance. Because, if you've seen a lot of Matt Damon movies, he's been some characters that totally are a different persona, like Ripley, for example, in Talented Mr. Ripley. That's a totally different person, but there's a kind of a generic Matt Damon performance. that you get used to and you kind of expect. And this is not that. For someone so famous as Matt Damon, I absolutely started thinking of him as this character as I'm watching the movie. Like, this character is very different from him. He talks different. He walks different. His mannerisms are different. And they just felt very authentic. It did not feel like Matt Damon. It felt like, oh, this is who Matt Damon is. And so that's really impressive. Another thing I really liked about the movie is it did a super good job of low key showing the differences in French culture versus American culture. So it was never like at the forefront, but you just got all these little touches of how French culture is different than American culture. And I thought that was really well executed and fun to do. I did not anticipate where this movie was going. It definitely took a direction I wasn't expecting. And it had a good, like, Cormac McCarthy ending to it. I really enjoyed this movie. I found it very interesting, and it's loosely based off a real story. So there's some, authenticity to it, but I think it's a fictionalized tale. And yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. So that's Stillwater with Matt Damon.
So I'm interested in this movie, but the only thing I know about it is that it's based on the Amanda Knox story somewhat.
Yeah.
And she was kind of calling out this movie for like basing a movie on her life without giving her credit.
Yeah. So I don't know too much about the Amanda Knox story. My guess is it was inspired by that, and then they just kind of told a different story. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, what if an American girl is in prison and then this is about the dad,
Yep, right.
I don't think it's trying to tell the Amanda Knox story.
It's not like the unofficial version.
It's definitely
of it,
not. It's definitely not that. Right. So if the details don't match, I completely believe that.
Cool. All right.
And the daughter's played by Abigail Breslin.
Haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah.
My number one is going to keep this oil drill theme going. And this is Sorcerer by William Friedkin.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
This is a remake of The Wages of Fear, which is a Clouseau movie. And they both have the same plot. It's about 4 men who work in a South American oil town. And the oil rig there, the drilling mechanism catches on fire. And the only way they can put the fire out, and apparently this is real because this is also in There'll Be Blood, is you basically have to like blow up the fire with nitroglycerin because that sucks all the oxygen out and just kind of kills the fire. Of course, the nitroglycerin, the TNT, is like in boxes 100 miles away and have all deteriorated and become unstable. So these 4 men get hired to load the TNT into a truck and drive it across the jungle so they can put the fire out. And it's an incredibly treacherous trip where there are swamps and bridges and mountainsides and, like trees falling. Basically, like if you have to drive a truck full of an incredibly unstable explosive, you do not want to be driving through the jungle. And that's what these men are doing. Now, what makes this a good remake that stands on its own is it gives you backstory on these 4 men. So the movie opens with like these 4 unconnected vignettes where like you see one man who's a businessman of French, one man's an assassin. You see Roy Scheider, he's the star of this movie, and he's kind of like running a gang. It's either in Chicago or New Jersey or some industrial town like that. So you kind of get an idea of who these 4 men are before they all arrive in the South American town, trying to like find a new future or trying to escape their own past, working at this, pretty terrible oil rig. This movie also has great tension because there's always scenes in both these movies where you're like, is this truck going to explode? Can it make it across this bridge or whatever? And especially in this one, it's probably the most famous scene. It's like even from the poster, where the truck needs to drive across this bridge over a raging river. And I would call this bridge like Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones style bridge. Like, it is like the most rickety thing you can see. And this movie came out in the 70s. Like, computer graphics were not great back then. So it's something where I'm sure they did it safely, but they basically had to drive a truck across a bridge to get this shot. And it is so well executed. William Friedkin, before this, he made The Exorcist and French Connection. So he was a hot director. And this movie kind of killed his career. He kept making movies, but never anything as big as this because it flopped. And the reason it flopped is it came out a week after Star Wars. So this was supposed to be like he was a bankable director. He made those 2 movies, made a ton of money. So the studios were like, great, this is our next big William Friedkin movie. He's gonna make us a ton of money. There's a silly sci-fi movie come out called Star Wars. Whatever, will be fine. And then I think this is kind of a forgotten movie. Like, it's definitely people who are seeking movies from the 70s will find it, but it's not a movie that gets talked about a lot. And I think it's the Star Wars effect. It just sort of got mowed over by this huge movie, and Friedkin never kind of made a movie of this caliber again.
Yeah. Have you seen the original? What's the original? I don't remember the name.
The Wages of Fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And they're both great in their own right. I can't say one is better than the other. I think they're equally good.
Yeah, and they're the exact same premise, but told in very different ways.
Yeah, Friedkin's doing much more of I guess grittier is the way to tell it. It's a dirtier movie. It's a definitely more violent movie. Where the original's focusing more on like the relationship of these guys as they're trying to transport this nitroglycerin with having the same tense scenes.
Yeah. I enjoyed it as well. It's a good one. I'm glad you got to it.
Yeah, Agreed. Me too. What's your number one, James?
My number one, and this is dead ass, but my most favorite movie out of the last 10. And maybe dead ass, my most favorite movie of 2021. It's definitely my dead ass most highest rated movie of 2021.
First word.
There's the word.
And it's Coda for sure. I love this movie, and it's such a good time. There's definitely some drama to be had in it, but it's drama that as you're watching it, you just know that things are going to turn out okay. You might not know how they're going to turn out, but they're going to be just fine in the hands of the people making this movie. It's a feel good drama, I would say, that has a few amazing bits of comedy in it. Like I was shocked at how much I was charmed by this movie and laughed out loud during it. And some of the funniest moments weren't even spoken. They're signed between one character and another. I think the performance is responsible for that, and also just really snappy, great character-based writing. Like, every character has their own ticks and interesting angles on what's going on within the plot of the movie, and maybe the most uninteresting person is the girl at the center of the movie. It's like they've created this universe for her of all these interesting characters, both deaf and hearing. Like, her music teacher is also a great character in the movie. He's hearing in it, and there's a couple of others throughout the movie, and I just enjoyed my time with it from one side to the other. And it's the rare movie that I can talk about on this podcast that literally I think anybody could watch and enjoy. Maybe not a little kid, because it does have some
crude humor,
adult language in it, stuff like that. But any adult / teenager could enjoy this movie and walk away not mad at it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe some people might not be super impressed with it. It's not exactly the most artistic movie out there, but as far as like well written, well-paced, funny, charming, dramatic when it needs to be, but not overly serious. I can't think of a better movie than Coda, really, that meets all those criteria. So my number one.
Zach, this has the kid from Sing Street in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
He was my least favorite part of Sing Street.
Well, he's not the main character in this movie either. So
he's definitely not the main character.
No. Yeah.
I just didn't think I didn't think his performance was super strong in Sing Street compared to the other actors.
I mean, the girl in Coda is by far a better singer than the kid from Sing Street, both in Coda and Sing Street.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Coda stands for Child of Deaf Adult.
Nice. Is the child deaf themselves?
She is not. Her brother is, but she is not. She's hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen a movie with Marla Maples, I think is her name.
Marla Maples was one of Trump's wives.
Oh. Who am I thinking
Marlee
of?
Matlin.
Marlee Matlin. Yeah,
Okay.
Same first name. Marlee Matlin. But I did see Marlee Matlin, oddly enough, on The Apprentice, I believe, with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's
you never watched Picket Fences?
Never watched Picket Fences.
Oh, she was on Picket Fences. That's how I know her.
Yeah, I mean, I think I need to see more movies with her in it because she was great. Yes.
She's a name that I know, but I can't think of. Like, oh yeah, I know her from this movie or this show.
She was also on West Wing.
Maybe that's West. Maybe the West Wing is where I saw her.
Then I've seen her in that because I've seen all of West Wing. I don't recognize most of these movies, although she did win an Academy Award for Best Actress for Children of a Lesser God. Never seen that. Anybody seen that?
I haven't.
No, and she may have been. Was she a child herself in that movie?
1986. So
no, so she's
a child.
21. No,
young.
She was 21.
She was young. Yeah.
Wow. So Google, I typed in child, and it's the first thing it suggested was Children of a Lesser God.
Mm-hmm.
And so Google, I think, must have just connected the dots that the thing I Googled right before it was Marlee Matlin. That's interesting.
Yeah, because there's no way searching child would bring up that movie first.
Yeah, there's no way.
Right.
But it must be like, well, right before he looked for Marlee Matlin, so that's interesting.
So I had looked for Marlee Matlin right before, and I typed in child, and the first one I get is child tax credit.
See, and that says something about you. You're trying to scam the system.
Hey, me and my 12 children need that money.
That's funny.
Awesome. Well, good top 10 last 10 bros.
We really broed this one out. There's so many bro puns, and I just can't think of like a single one that works for our movies whatsoever.
For sure. What's a top 10 bro movie?
A top 10, I don't know, like Rounders.
That's not a bro movie.
Dude, where's my the Boiler Room.
Dude, where's my car?
Dude, where's my
that's
car?
A bro movie. See that
Road Trip.
Fight Club.
Oh, Fight Club's such a bro movie.
It's a movie that bros like for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rocky.
I don't know if the bros go for Rocky.
They did at the time.
At the time, maybe.
Yeah.
For sure.
Inception. The bros like Inception.
Yeah, they do.
Everyone likes Inception.
I know, including the bros.
Okay.
Inglourious Bastards. Bros like Inglourious Bastards.
Princess Bride.
I don't think the bros like Princess Bride.
They definitely like Princess Bride.
Okay.
Everybody likes Princess Bride.
And you like Princess Bride.
Everyone likes Princess Bride.
Everyone?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like Princess Bride. Do you?
So Princess Bride, 100% Rotten Tomatoes, the most perfect movie?
No. Rotten Tomatoes isn't, did you like the film? It's, do you recommend the film? So even someone that gave it a rotten on Rotten Tomato, they could have liked it.
They like it, but they don't recommend it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
I find that logic flawed.
There are people that like heroin but don't recommend it.
I don't think they like
heroin. Do you
heroin.
find that logic flawed?
No. Well, they're addicted. They have to like heroin. Their body chemistry has been changed to where if they don't do heroin, they're in trouble.
Fine. I don't care the reason for their no. I mean, like that. Just because that's the reason for their liking doesn't mean they like. I mean,
I don't think people who are addicted to heroin actually like heroin. They have to do heroin.
Let me ask you this: do you think there are people that like it that don't recommend it? Yeah.
Okay, but you said everyone. Okay.
Everyone likes Princess Bride.
No, everyone doesn't like Princess Bride.
Based on what?
Based on the fact that it's not 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That means someone didn't like it. Not that I liked it. I don't recommend it. It's really not for you. It's just for me. No, they did not like it, and they wrote a bad review.
A rotten on Rotten Tomatoes does not mean they didn't like it. It means they don't recommend it.
But
just like we saw with heroin, you can like something and not recommend it.
No, Rotten Tomatoes is not only people who like it but don't recommend. It's also people who don't like and don't recommend.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You're talking in absolutes like a Sith Lord.
That's not cool, bro.
That's not cool, bro.
All right. That's it, I guess.
That's a good place to stop.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode 492 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, you can always send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. I'm just realizing now we didn't go through all the housekeeping at the beginning of the episode. We absolutely skipped all of that. So, send us an email. Go check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube. Search Cinereelists. You'll find it right there. Leave us an Apple podcast review. We'd appreciate that. Positive review, 5 stars only. Leave a little bit of text. We'll talk about it on the show. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. Get extra after show audio. And you could also follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Cinereelists, or follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can follow myself on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shaubin.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
Nice. Next week, we are not sure exactly what we're doing. We still have yet to decide. So we're going to leave it a mystery because it's a mystery to us, bro. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.